To whom does the auditor report illegal acts and fraud? The auditor, of course, reports them to the audit committee. Does the auditor report illegal acts and fraud to outside third parties? Only in 4 special situations. 1. When there has been an auditor change and the successor questions the predecessor auditor. 2. When the work papers have been subpoenaed into court. 3. When the client receives government funding. The government wants to know about situations where the client lacks integrity. Our U.S. government does not want to continue funding this type of client. And 4. When the client trades their stock on the major stock exchanges, the auditor must report situations to the SEC where the client does not respond to the auditor's request to change the financial statements. The Private Securities Act of 1995 says the auditor must report to the SEC within 1 business day of discovering the situation. Remember, though, this only applies when the client does not respond to the auditor's request to change the financial statements. What is professional skepticism? It is tested on every CPA exam along with due professional care. The auditor should exercise due professional care and maintain an attitude of professional skepticism. This is defined as the following. Due professional care means the auditor should possess the skill commonly possessed by others in the field. Act and do what other auditors do. Also, the auditor should observe the standards of fieldwork and reporting. When an auditor exercises professional skepticism, they maintain a questioning mind and assume management is neither honest nor dishonest. They critically review the judgments made and critically review the work done. Stay awake, auditors, and stay awake, CPA candidates. Please know what due professional care and professional skepticism mean. Due professional care is one of the 10 generally accepted auditing standards. The CPA candidate does not need to memorize the 10 standards. You will learn the various standards as you study all of the modules. For now, remember that the auditor must be trained. This involves adequate education and experience. The quality control standards govern the CPA firm, not the individual CPA. The firm must subject to a peer review every 3 years. There are 5 quality control standards as follows. 1. Independence, integrity, and objectivity. 2. Personnel management. 3. Acceptance and continuance of clients. 4. Engagement performance. And 5. Monitoring. Peer review is the form of monitoring. Look for 1 or 2 multiple choice questions on the standards. Most CPA candidates have studied the 10 generally accepted auditing standards. In fact, many have memorized them for their auditing professors. When it comes to the Attestation Standards, however, few students or CPA candidates have ever heard of them, let alone studied or learned them. Well, get ready, because the CPA exam will test you heavily on the Attestation Standards and lightly test the 10 generally accepted auditing standards. Therefore, your emphasis should be on the 11 Attestation Standards. Before we begin discussing the Attestation Standards, I will provide a general definition and discussion of the area. An attestation engagement is a situation where a practitioner has been engaged to issue a written communication that expresses a conclusion about the reliability of a written assertion that is the responsibility of another party. Wow, that's a mouthful. Let's take some time to break the definition of an attest engagement down into components so that the area is more understandable. First, understand that you, the auditor, are now being referred to as an accountant or as a practitioner. Why? because you are not auditing. Recall the term auditing refers to the situation where the accountant of a public accounting firm is providing reasonable assurance on the fairness of the financial statements. The term auditing is only used when the auditor is providing reasonable assurance on the financial statements. Second, understand that the end result of an attest engagement is a written communication. So the end result of this type of engagement is some sort of written report. Third, another party, such as your client, is making an assertion. What does this mean? Well, in an audit, management of the client company makes assertions within the financial statements. For example, in an audit engagement, when management hands over the financial statements, they are asserting that all of the inventory shown on the balance sheet exists, that it is properly valued in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles at the lower of cost or market, and that they, your client, have the rights to the inventory. For an attest engagement, another party must make some type of assertion, and that assertion must be presented to the public accounting firm in writing. For an audit, the assertions happen to be about presentation and disclosure, existence and occurrence, rights and obligations, completeness, and valuation or allocation. Let's look at some examples of attestation engagements and then think about the assertions that would be involved. Typical examples of an attest engagement include an audit, a review of financial statements, a compliance report that reports on such things as the statutory, regulatory, or contractual requirements contained in an agreement, a report to issue an opinion on a client's internal controls and its effectiveness, a description of computer software, a report on investment performance statistics, and the two newest attest engagements, a web trust engagement and a sys trust engagement. A web trust engagement is where a practitioner has been hired to assess a client's commercial internet site for predefined criteria that are designed to measure such things as transaction integrity, information protection, and disclosure of business practices. For example, if a website such as Amazon.com discloses the business practice of shipping the orders within 48 hours and accepting Visa, MasterCard, and American Express credit cards, the CPA would test the practice to see if, in fact, Amazon.com really does accept those credit cards and if they really do ship their orders within 48 hours. The CPA would follow the Attestation Standards to verify this information and then would issue a written report. Before we discuss the standards and the report types, however, let's think about the general facts about all attest engagements. First, the CPA must be independent from the client to perform an attest engagement. Second, there are two conditions that must be met for all attest engagements. The two conditions are: 1, the written assertion that an outside party provides must be capable of evaluation against a reasonable criteria. And 2, the written assertion must be capable of reasonably consistent estimation or measurement. If you think about an audit or a review engagement, the written assertions are the financial statements, and the criteria that the statements are evaluated against is GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles. The estimation or measurement involved in this type of attest engagement would be the United States dollar. The financial statements are measured in U.S. currency. Let's take another example. If a practitioner has been asked to issue an opinion on a client's internal control, the written assertion that management would provide would probably be the fact that the internal controls within their company are operating effectively. The criterion that is most often used today for evaluating internal control is the Coso Framework. C-O-S-O, Coso, stands for the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission. Coso was a special committee appointed by the AICPA to study internal control, and as such is providing the benchmark for today's evaluation of companies' internal controls. The measurement of the internal control effectiveness would be conducted by performing tests of controls to determine if the controls are indeed operating effectively. We will discuss reporting on the effectiveness of an entity's internal control more in the next CD, Module 2, Internal Control. Another basic fact about attest engagements is that of independence. The CPA, or practitioners we call them, must be independent to perform an attest engagement. So for all of the above examples, the CPA must be independent of the other party. The CPA exam will often ask a basic question like this: which of the following is an example of an attest engagement? Watch it. Think about what you already know. For example, if as a CPA you are performing tax work for a client, you do not have to be independent. Therefore, would consulting functions be considered an attest function? No, the CPA does not have to be independent when consulting a client. Other examples include serving as an expert witness, performing a compilation engagement, or simply assisting a client. An expert witness does not have to be independent of the client. Therefore, this is not an attest function. Compilations and assisting the client also do not require independence and therefore are not attest engagements. Now we will discuss the 11 attestation standards. Should the CPA candidate be prepared to memorize the 11 attest standards? I would say not. I would simply know some of the more commonly used standards. For example, I would know that there are 3 overall categories that the 11 standards are divided among. 1. General attest standards. 2. Standards of field work. And 3. The reporting standards. Does this sound familiar? Certainly. The 10 generally accepted auditing standards are also divided among the same 3 categories. The general attest standards are easy. 1. The practitioner must be trained. Oh, you know this. Training is obtained through education and experience. 2. The practitioner must have adequate knowledge in the subject matter of the assertion. So if you, the CPA, know nothing about web trust engagements, you should not perform this type of attest service. 3. The practitioner should perform of being evaluated against a reasonable criteria established by a recognized body, and 2, the assertion is capable of consistent estimation or measurement using such criteria. Oh, you know this too. The above 2 conditions must be in place to perform an attest function. The 4th general attest standard is independence. Remember, the CPA must be independent to perform an attest service. And finally, the 5th general attest standard is that the CPA must exercise due professional care. Yes, this is just like the due professional care that you would exercise in an audit. The CPA would possess skills commonly possessed by others in the field, observe all of the attest standards, maintain a questioning mind, assume management is neither honest nor dishonest, and critically review the work done and the judgments made. So far, everything appears to be quite similar to the 10 GAAS. Now stay awake here. There is a major difference when it comes to the standards of field work for an audit versus an attest engagement. In a test engagement, there are only 2 standards of field work. 1, planning and supervision, and 2, obtain sufficient evidence. Can you think of which one is missing? Internal control. Recall that for all audits, the auditor must understand the internal control process to plan the audit and to determine the nature, timing, and extent of the test to be a CPA performing the attest function of, say, a review engagement for a non-public entity is not required to understand the internal controls. Now think this through. Some of the attest engagements require an understanding of internal control, but not all. Therefore, this standard is not included for attest engagements. Finally, the reporting standards for attest engagements contain a few basic factors. 1. The report shall identify the assertion. 2. The report shall state the practitioner's conclusion about the reliability about the assertion. 3. The report shall state any significant reservations about the engagement and the assertion. And 4. The reports for agreed-upon procedure engagements must add a paragraph that restricts the use of the report to agreed-upon parties. I suggest that you listen to this section of the CD several times. Attest engagements will also be discussed in the CD entitled Audit Reporting Module 4. Don't forget to obtain reliable software and/or textbooks to use as practice to test your understanding of the application of the Attest standards. Recall that Wiley offers a full line of products to help you at www.wiley.com/CPA.